Welcome to Built to Last, the podcast where entrepreneurs share real stories about the triumphs and challenges of building enduring success. Hosted by Colby Jardine and Levi Lawrence.
Great. Well, welcome to Built to Last. I'm really excited. For those of you who haven't listened to any others, this is going to be one of the first times I'm talking to somebody who I've never met or have any context in, and I'm really, I've said jokingly in past conversations that this is like not just a podcast, it's also a chance for us to have meaningful conversations and build real relationships with people we don't know, because, making friends over 30 is rare. And so I'm excited to kind of dive into it in this protected, distraction-free space. But I am going to pass it off to Colby before we pass it off to Marina to introduce herself. But Colby, I know you had bridged the connection here. So any intro points before we pass it over?
Yes. I met Marina, it was in Brazil that we met first. And that was my first EO experience ever. And I'm sure we're going to talk about EO today at some stage. But I've always been, we had a conversation about LinkedIn and personal branding. And I had this kind of preconceived idea that I didn't like that, like for myself. And you've since turned me around on that whole thing, and my LinkedIn presence is a lot busier. Well, it's way busier than whatever I was doing before. So thank you for that little push, and I want to learn more about...
I'll thank you for it too. I've been trying to get him on that bandwagon for 3 years.
Yeah, so it was her, not you. Sorry. So yeah, I want to learn more about your business and some stories that of people that you've worked with, and I just want to know more about your whole life. And we get to spend a fair amount of time together when we go away on these trips. But I'm going to let you introduce yourself as you would introduce yourself to up to this date. Like, what's new? You can kind of lay the groundwork.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor and pleasure, and I'm excited to also, get to know you better as we have this conversation, and to get to know you, Levi, as well. I like what you mentioned, Levi, about it being hard to make friends after 30, and I think that maybe that's going to be one of the topics we can discuss. I find the conversation about friendship is coming up a lot among people, and something I'm really curious about as well. My name is Marina Byezhanova. I was born and grew up in Ukraine, thus the very difficult to pronounce last name. My family immigrated to Canada when I was 16. That was my first ever time on a plane. I remember I couldn't understand how people are sitting on the plane and eating and drinking when we've got clouds underneath us. I remember that feeling in that moment. Developed a lifelong obsession with travel. I travel quite a bit right now for work, for EO, for pleasure. I own a business which is called Brand of a Leader. It's a personal branding agency for CEOs and for founders, Brand of a Leader. Thought leadership is just a topic that I'm really passionate about. And because marketing is completely changing constantly, and especially now with AI and a big shift from SEO to AEO, something we can chat about as well, I'm fascinated by it. My business we just completed 4 years, 4 fiscal years. We're still young, but we're very mighty. We grew very fast. We grew to 24, scaled down to 17 thanks to AI. That's another story, all part of growth. We've worked with CEOs in 12 different countries now. My team is completely remote. And I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. One's a teenager. That's quite an interesting experience, and another one's 9 years old. So that's me.
So not bored.
Not bored at all.
No, and what's really funny, because often I'm constantly taking on new things. I'm very involved with EO, with Entrepreneurs Organization. I have multiple roles right now at the global level and chapter level as well, and I'm taking on 5 roles next year. And people go, what's wrong with you? It sounds like you already had enough to do. But it's what fuels me. So no, not bored.
Actually, that kind of does lead. My first question is, we always got to be careful with the word busy, but you do seem very busy, and you're traveling a ton. And I'd love to kind of dive a little deeper into your business and how are you managing everything right now? Like, walk me through that.
I've got hacks. Okay, so if you want some hacks, I have hacks. I'm very intentional with what I do.
We're here for the hacks.
Okay, so hack number one, I only, and I mean only, do things that give me energy, that don't take my energy. In the business, there's nothing I do that takes my energy. And the moment something does, I right away flag it to my co-founder and I look for, who can do this? Who would derive energy from this if it's not me? Same with any other projects that I take on. Let's say within EO, there are a lot of opportunities for cool stuff to do. I only take on stuff that energizes me because more energy gives me then more fuel to do other things. It's same with my children. I'm very self-aware of things that I don't enjoy as a parent. Like most of the typical games, like playing, I don't like. There are certain games I like and then others I don't. And I really struggled with this and I would force myself to be a good parent and do it. Until I've learned that no, if I go all in on things that I do enjoy doing with my kids, then again, that gives me energy. I don't get as tired. And they also feel that I'm there experiencing actual joy and not pretending and forcing myself. So that's my hack number one. I have others too, but that's an important one.
And
Only
you
doing
found
things
a
that
way
bring
to
me energy.
enjoy and get energy from paying taxes? Just
No, but at least I'm not the one calculating them and going through the
okay.
painstaking process, right? So at least the actual pain of that is outsourced and then out of sight, out of
Yeah.
mind. But it's a very timely question. Yes.
Wow. Okay. And then you mentioned, so how many roles are you in with EO right now?
Right now, I am in three. So right now, I'm leading all of our global learning. I am chairing the EO Women Global Summit, which is going to be in Montreal in June. I'm so excited. And then I'm also co-chairing strategic alliance partnerships for a chapter as well. So three, one chapter, two global.
So, can I ask, is EO your first peer group? Because we've talked about a few different peer groups. We've had lots of guests, and it's not always been just EO. But what was your first introduction to that world? How did you first hear about that model?
So first, to quickly, preface that, I had it hard as an immigrant in Canada, and coming here as a teenager, it was rough. Like I constantly felt like I'm weird, and a lot of people would call me interesting, but not in a flattering like way. Just she's interesting. I had a very hard time, making friends, and just always felt that I was weird. I had another business that I was growing at the time, and we were invited to an event, which was essentially a test drive, a recruitment event that EO had put together. I didn't know where I was going, but just like that was a cool event, great speaker, great venue, so I went. And I was blown away. It was really, as cliche as it sounds, we hear it from a lot of EO members, but I was sitting in a taxi going back home thinking, I found my people. I am by far not the weirdest one in that room. In fact, I felt pretty square. Not as interesting as others. Not as interesting.
Yeah.
And also just in EO, the fact that people don't pitch to each other. And so they were asking me questions, being genuinely interested and not looking over my head to see if there was somebody more valuable to them passing by. And that feeling was great. And so I said, I must join this group, sign me up, and then learned that that was not doable because I had a young business and so we wouldn't qualify. This was 11 and a half years ago. And so they said, well, don't worry, we have a new program. It's called Accelerator. We're launching it in Montreal. And we're launching it this year. You're going to be in the first cohort. You're going to be in a learning day quarterly. And, hopefully we're going to help you scale and you'll join EO. And I thought that sounds horrible because I did not want to sit in the classroom quarterly. I also felt I could not step away from my business. I did not want to go back to school, and I wanted to hang out with those people, not with those other people. And so I was very unexcited, but I figured if I say yes, they might invite me to some of their events. And so I said yes, and I went. And the first day blew me away. It was some of the most powerful, high impact, tangible learning that I could have experienced. I absolutely fell in love with the Accelerator program. I'm a huge fan of it. Within a year, we doubled our revenue with no increase in headcount, qualified for EO, and that was 10 and a half years ago. So yes, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, this was my first peer-to-peer group, and that's how I found EO.
Yeah. I love it. Finding your tribe, like even taking it outside of specifically business peer groups. Like You know, I was in a conversation the other day. It's just like, it just feels so right when you find other people who just get it at all levels. Even like I was a chef by trade for 10 years before I went into business, and you get in a room with people who understand that world. It's just the conversations change, and the way you socialize and the way you talk to each other and the way you get, yeah, it's just so important to have that circle.
Yeah, I also really
So,
like being surrounded by people who intimidate me, because I very often walk into your groups and feel, that there are always so many more people, as much as, I seem to be doing a lot and I'm, successful by many standards. But every time I walk into an EO room, I wouldn't say imposter syndrome. I don't like that concept, but I do feel a little bit intimidated. And I love that feeling because it pushes me to, just inspires me to want more, to set a higher standard for myself, to keep growing. And, it's cliche. They say that, we're the sum of people that we surround ourselves with, but it's true. It's so, so true. It goes back to the
Most
concept of
cliches are.
friendship, right? And keeping those
Yeah.
older friendships too, that might not serve us anymore. So, yeah, I believe that those groups are exceptionally important.
that's actually why I joined the Bridge chapter, because I knew from the outside looking in that it was a really high quality group, and I wanted to be intimidated, and I am, and still am.
That was my question. And working.
Yeah, it's great. But so 4 years, you got a fresh business, semi-fresh business, um, and you mentioned that you really audited the things that give and take your energy.
All the time.
How else have you, because it seems, and correct me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you've built a life that is intentional and that you want right now. And because you are traveling a lot, your family, I do see your family at these events, and your your son's becoming an entrepreneur, and he sold me appetizers that were already paid for, um, in Brazil, and I happily paid, and I'd pay again.
You
Um,
made a killing.
yeah, he made a killing off of stuff we already paid for. Uh, but talk to me about life design, and do you feel like you're doing well in that regard, from like kind of designing and being intentional with your life? Because it's something I'm still struggling with.
I'm exceptionally intentional. When I started my first business, my daughter, who is now 15, which is mind blowing, she was 10 months old, and I got judged a lot. And a lot of people would tell me or imply or share stories that kind of decide what it is that you're going to sacrifice. That you're going to have to sacrifice something. Either you're going to sacrifice being a present parent, or you're going to sacrifice, growing the business. Something you're going to want to sacrifice. And I didn't want to sacrifice because to me, I really wanted to be a very present parent and have a very close relationship with my daughter and now both of my kids. I now have two. But I also am exceptionally ambitious and career oriented, and I love to travel, and I didn't want to sacrifice any of that. But I struggled for a very long time because I got a lot of judgmental comments, especially from other women, and especially from other women who didn't work. A lot of judgmental comments. Oh, you're traveling again? Who's with your kids? Oh, well, I choose to be a full-time mother, as though I'm not a full-time mother. There are no times during the day when I'm not a mother. All those silly comments, but they really cut very close to heart. Fast forward now, my daughter is 15, as I mentioned. My son is 9, and I see that I managed well. I have an incredibly close relationship with them by design, and also, business is doing great, and professionally, I feel very fulfilled. Now, what I do with that is one of my favorite concepts. It's another hack that I have is stacking. And I talk about it so much that now people are mentioning it back to me, which feels very rewarding. That means like I've really incorporated it into my narrative and what I talk about. Stacking means just merging my lives together, and I'll give some examples. So not choosing it's this compartmentalized and that, but trying to bring them together. The first time I did it was when I brought my daughter, who was actually, she was 9, same as my son now. I brought her to an event where I spoke. It was an EO event. It was in Ottawa. And I spoke, and it blew her mind, especially that another speaker was Charlene Labonte, who is like a multiple time like gold medal winner from the Olympics, I think like 4 times or something crazy. And so people were like coming up for an autograph, and they were, of course, EO style. Everything was very fancy and cameras and everything. And so by correlation there, my daughter decided that I'm famous and that I'm very, very, very successful. And that really worked in my favor. I've been milking that I'm famous thing for many years now. That's a separate story. That's number one. Number two, I do not miss, my daughter is a competitive dancer, and I do not miss a single competition. I am always there. It's blocked on my calendar. And while she's doing her thing, unless she's on stage, I'm working, I'm doing my other stuff, I'm there on my computer, and I'm managing both. I don't hover over her, which she appreciates, and so we have a great relationship as a result, but she knows that I'm always there. She does a lot of dance, and so I bring her to a lot of practices aside from competitions, and I'm there in the parking lot doing stuff. Or now I stack it with going to the gym. So now when she's at dance, I go to the gym, I finish the gym, I pick her up. So I do a lot of that planning. My son does tennis. I sign him up for tennis at my gym, so he does tennis, I do gym, and I'm able to manage those different things. I've also, another thing that I've done, and actually this was an idea that came from also an EO event years ago, I do one-on-one trips with my kids. I let them choose where we're going, and it can just be for 3 days, 4 days. It doesn't have to be anything very lengthy. And I go with them, and then they have my undivided attention, and it's just one-on-one, and we're doing what they want to do. Now, mind you, now that my daughter is older, now things can get fancier for her. So the last one-on-one that we did, I had to travel to Dubai for a big event. And so imagine she was 14. I took my 14 at the time my 14-year-old out of school to go to Dubai for just over a week. And so I combined my two worlds. While I worked, she did other things. She hung out. I finished working. We spent days visiting and doing things together. So I combined things. I call it stacking. We just had Global Leadership Conference in Hawaii. I took the kids out of school. Teachers were unimpressed. A vice principal of one of the schools sent me an email. But I did my, worldly experiences, and they got to enjoy Hawaii, and then we got to hang out together. So I summarize it all with stacking. That's been a big part of how I approach parenting and kind of juggling it all.
Yeah. I love the understanding of having one life versus a bunch of things trying to balance them against each other. It's really, and there's seasons. It's going to be seasons where you're more execution or getting stuff done, and like people get it.
Yeah.
I'd love to chat about, like, we haven't had this conversation, but, and I don't know, Colby, if you and I have even had this conversation, but I have a lot of conflicting thoughts around personal brand. And this sounds like a great time to chat about it. My first business was, I had a local food company, grocery stores, food processing, distribution. I ran it for 8 years, grew from 2 people to 45 people, multiple cities. And one of the main things that I did and enjoyed was I spoke. I enjoyed it. They give me a mic. And so it ended up being I was the local food guy. The brand of the business and the brand of myself were so interrelated that you couldn't separate them. 35 speaking engagements a year, TEDx talk, CPC every month, and then that business closed, and it closed really hard, which is a separate story that I'm happy to go in. But then my personal brand was so tied to that it was a rough couple of years. Get back into business. I've done a couple things. We merged companies with Colby's, and we're now Iron House Pro. And I've just in the last 12 months, we made the decision actually 18 months ago, and we internally talked about our goals as leaders, what we wanted to do. And it's I wanted to get back on stage. I wanted to speak. I wanted to have that online and offline personal brand that I could build back up. But I don't want to be the guy who is the business, and vice versa. And so now we're right in the middle of it right now, because we're doing this podcast like arm's length but similar with our company Iron House Pro. But I'm doing stuff separately, and how do you disconnect? And also we have clients who actively are working with us to separate their brand because they're coming up on potentially a succession. They want to prepare their business holistically as something that could be easier to transition either to management team, next generation, or to a sale. And so how do you, first of all, should you connect your company to your personal brand? And if you have already done that, because a lot of people do, how do you keep them separate or separate them more intentionally? Any thoughts on that?
That's a fantastic question, and it's a very valid question, right? Because we're told that to have a successful exit specifically, you want to make sure that there's no impression that the business depends on you in any way, right? Including your visibility, marketing, et cetera. That's number one. And also number two, if a business does fail, which I've gone through that experience too, well, now, how do you come out of that story because you're so deeply associated with it? And thank you for briefly sharing that. A lot of people don't talk about their failures, and we all have them, and it's important to talk about them. I'll give you a very honest answer, and I hope you don't mind, but I am, from the former Soviet Union, so I'm very direct and honest. The reason that happened, Levi, is that you weren't building a personal brand. You did not build a personal brand. You built yourself up to be a spokesperson of your business. There's a huge difference in that, and that's where we go wrong. So if you build a personal brand, the personal brand will always be bigger than the business because you are bigger than the business. You have so much more that you can talk about, that you're interested in, that you're involved in, than just the business. If you only talk about the business, then of course people are going to correlate the two. You're the spokesperson for it. So yes, of course it affects exitability. It affects scalability as well, because then everything hinges on you. And then of course, if, hopefully it's not another failure is not going to happen, but if it does, of course, there's a connection. When you build your personal brand right, which is it's bigger, it's more aspirational, it's inspiring, it's not only about the business, it's almost the opposite in fact in that, for example, from the client standpoint, clients really don't even expect to work with you because you have so much more of a brand, right? I'll give you myself as an example. I'm very active on LinkedIn in particular as far as social media. I do a lot of speaking, very active with an EO, podcasting, all those different things. But because I don't just narrowly focus on only talking about personal branding and only talking about brand of a leader. When prospective clients come to us, they almost say like, oh, I know you've got so much going on. I know I'm going to be working with your team. They just make that assumption. So when you're able to zoom out, that's hard to do because that means that before you start creating any kind of content, you have to answer a very difficult question of, well, what is your brand? Not with adjectives and stuff. What can be your unique brand angle, brand concept? When we work with clients, that's what we help them figure out, their concept, their something, a unique angle for their thought leadership that's portable, that would apply to you, Levi, whether you were in the food business or in the new business or any other business, because it's you. There's a common denominator. There's a reason why you're involved in these different things. So to do it right, you have to figure out what that concept is. You also have to figure out what are going to be your topics that you want to be associated with that zoom out from the business and that can also show that your brand is bigger than just this particular business. That's the key. Most people don't do that. Most people don't do brand strategy for their personal brand before they go into execution. Number one. And then number two, they just become spokespeople for the business itself. And that's a big mistake.
That tracks.
No pressure.
That's good. It's validating. Yeah. It's one of those things like, I don't think it was validating. Yeah. That's exactly kind of, it's coming up, but it is hard, and it's taking the time when you're focused on because it's two exercises. it's because you also have to do those exercises for your business to be able to understand the differentiation. And so, segmenting that head is so I'm pretty familiar with branding as a methodology and lots of different ways people do it, especially from a company point of view. What are the deliverables that, is it similar, I would expect? Like, would you have like a style guide and kind of a tone and language? Would you go down to like colors and fonts and that level? Or is it more like what are, like if I was looking for work on personal brand, what are the things that I would use, the rules? Like, what's it look like?
So first of all, the process itself to arrive at the outcomes, which I will share with you, the process is a process of deep introspection. What most clients tell us is, I came to you thinking this was going to be a marketing exercise, like when we did it for my business, and instead I feel like I'm with my psychoanalyst, and we're talking about my childhood and the biggest traumas or highlights of my life, and that is the process. So we take you through a process of deep introspection. We ask a lot of very personal questions because the idea is for us to find, well, what are the patterns, what are the common denominators? Around that, we build your angular point of view. So number one, that process becomes slightly different. You're absolutely right, by the way, Levi, that, and that's another thing I didn't mention before when answering your question about how do you make that distinction. It's important that as we build our personal brand as a leader, as a founder brand, as our thought leadership brand, that we are also building the brand of the business. Because also, if the brand does not have a business, well, then of course ours will become it, and then again there's that problem. So it's very important to do. So those exercises you're doing for the business, they're important. Often, again, as founders, we make a mistake that when we go through those exercises ourselves, we just copy what we did for the business. And it's not always the same because who we are and our brands, well, again, they're bigger than the business. Quick example, we do the core values exercise with our clients. All of our clients are founders of businesses. As I said, we work with a couple of C-level executives, mostly company CEOs and founders. And when we do the core values exercise, well, 99.9% cheat. They'll just take the core values of the business and go, I already did this exercise, here you go. The answer is yes, and is there a core value? Of course, all the core values in the business are your core values. If not, that's an issue. But is there also a core value that's not in the business? It's yours, but you don't expect your business partner to share it. You don't expect your employees to share it, but there's something that's really deeply authentic to you. So with the personal brand, first of all, similar exercises, but it's a deep process of introspection. So that's number one. And then number two, as you asked me, what are the deliverables? Not every client wants to have a logo and fonts and, the usual, what we typically get when we build our corporate brand. A lot of our clients will use colors and fonts, et cetera, of their business for continuity purposes. And that works well. Neither one is better or less or very necessary. Mm-hmm. Unless you're going to build a personal website. Let's say you're going to say, you know what, in addition to my business, I also want to serve on boards. I want to write a book. I want to be speaking outside of the business as well. I want to have a personal website. Well, then it would be nice to have logo and colors, etc. It's not a must. What is a must and what the deliverable is when we deliver the brand identity to a client is, number one, the unique angle. The whole point of building a personal brand as a business owner is to build thought leadership. That is the new SEO currency. We know that this is what helps our businesses grow. So the number one thing to figure out is, well, what's going to be your angle or your point of view? If you're going to be building thought leadership, it's hard to build it, unless you're an academic and you just completed your thesis on a very specific research topic. So what is it going to be? What's going to be that angle, that thing that's going to be yours, that you're going to be associated with? We'll help figure that out. And then, of course, what is going to be your brand voice? How do you want to be perceived and not perceived with intention? A lot of people just let it kind of roll out, but with intention. Who are your audiences? What are going to be your platforms? What is going to be your brand vocabulary? So all of those things as well. So more so, if with corporate branding, we rely a lot on the visual. In personal branding, the visual is typically our face. And then the rest of it is all words and wordsmithing in a way that would be compelling and would allow you to stand out.
It's funny. I just got done a session earlier today in helping a company understand AI, generative AI, and part of actually, Colby, I don't know if we've talked about it, but in some of our conversations where we talk about branding and consistency and building those internal processes and marketing, internal, external, is around your voice. How do you, because now you really need to be able to describe your voice in much more technical terms because there's tools that can use it. Anyway, I love that stuff. I think that's I've done it myself. I read it out to them earlier and they're like, that's exactly who you are. It's I couldn't have wrote it. I fed AI dozens of examples of what I like about what I write to get it out. But I'd love to go through the idea that you can do that through a process and introspection of, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And naturally, we'll leverage AI tools now very actively. When Jenny and I first hit the market, well, really last year, we went through all the stages that most went through. We just didn't get stuck in them. But we were in denial, too. Because what happened was that all of a sudden, we do a lot of content creation for clients, right? We write a lot of LinkedIn posts, we write a lot of articles. And so all of a sudden, it's like we woke up and we got a competitor who wasn't amazing, but was free or $20 a month and was only getting better. And so all of a sudden we have this and everyone's very excited about this competitor. It's cool to be using this competitor. So at first we went into denial and we said, well, it's not as good as what we create. And, went in the direction kind of, the opposite of the current. And then we realized that no, it's going to be a losing game. That is what losers do, right? We're going to denial, and then we're in the next Kodak. Why don't we embrace it? Why don't we use it to our advantage? And what can we do? What is that human component that we can add that it can't do? So, for example, when we're trying to figure out a client's brand voice, like you said, you've worked on, and those things, AI is exceptionally helpful with that. AI cannot create a unique concept. AI deals in non-unique, right? That's what it does. That's the whole point.
And
It's like it's
hopefully it
collective
can't get you to your
intelligence.
personal values.
Hopefully not, right? Or again, they would be generic,
Yet.
right? If I ask it,
Yeah.
what are my values? I've done this exercise. What are my values? It says a lot of like really cutesy thing that would apply to me, to you, and to you, right? Like we could all be like, yes.
Yeah.
So it's just not unique. So anything that we're able to do as far as creating brand identity for clients that creates that point of uniqueness. Same with writing a brand story. We've tried everything with AI to create compelling brand stories, and it's just cheesy and generic. When we write a client's brand story, I kid you not, it's every single one. Every single client gets choked up. And people I would never think, one of my favorite examples, I don't know if you know him, Colby Brian Bro. He's been a member for 30 years. He was our global chair for a bunch of years ago. He does our GLA, RLA. He does the EMP program. He's like, EO royalty and just like the serious, stoic guy. He's one of my favorite people, period, and the EO people for sure. And so when he came to work with us, I was just so excited and just so nervous, this better go well. And I remember reading his brand story to him. And he paused after I finished reading, and there's a pause, and we're sitting in this pause, and I'm like, what's going on? And he choked up. And this is like this crazy, like one of the people that I respect the most. And he was like, wow, that made me emotional. Like that actually made me emotional. AI can't deliver on that, at least not yet. Maybe one day, but not yet. So that's where also
You don't
we're
get the
waiting.
tinglies from an AI post typically, no.
Nope.
And to be honest, we're working with a lot of companies who like we're years and years away from a general adoption of some of these tools. So there's a long time where there's going to be a huge sector of people who, super successful people that we're just going to still need more nuanced support and help because they got other things they're good at. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still stuck on this spokesperson versus personal brand, and I don't even think I told you that. I'm not sure if I did tell you, Marina, but that I also had like a pretty significant failed business experience, but I was the spokesperson
Oh, you are. Yeah.
right across the country on TV and ads and all that kind of stuff. So I just like didn't want to leave, and I think now I'm not even sure if I ever made this connection, but I think that's why I never liked LinkedIn past that point where I was like, I just don't. I just there was something about it that felt off to me, and I now that you said that, I'm like, that's exactly what that problem was.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll share a very vulnerable story with you that I have not shared with anyone outside of my business partner. So definitely not in any interviews.
You heard it here first.
Right. But I think it's going to be resonant to you with what you're saying, because certainly when we build visibility, whether we're building it properly as a personal brand or as a spokesperson, but when we build visibility, of course, if we fail in public, right? There's just no escaping it. It doesn't matter if you're doing it right or wrong, but if you fail, then you're failing in public. What I did do right was when I did have my failure, I had been building my personal brand without, by the way, calling it my personal brand. I only started calling it personal branding when I launched Brand of a Leader, but I wasn't calling it that. I was also always felt the term as very narcissistic and self-indulgent and uncomfortable. I'm building my personal brand. Like it just sounds not very inspiring. But I was putting myself out there, I was building a lot of visibility. I was just building it not only around that particular specific business, although I was, but I had zoomed out. So I had a lot of people paying attention to me, not only because of that business, but the vulnerable part of the story. So the business failed. It was during COVID. It was one of the most painful and terrible experiences of my life. I can now talk about it with a smile because I now have a successful business. At the time, I wanted to crawl under a rock and make sure nobody knows about it. And so we decided to bankrupt the business after it really, essentially we went from just, revenue, everything's fantastic, great. COVID hit. We had no cash reserves. We weren't prepared for it. We had a failed partnership with my business partner. And what were we going to do? It just, there was no saving it. There were other details in the story, but long story short. And so we decided that we were going to bankrupt it. And so I call a I call the company, I call it Raymond Chabot, because that's just, they're known for those things. And there's an account manager that gets assigned. And so I say hello and I introduce myself. I'm driving, because when I have these really terrible, uncomfortable conversations in life, I try as much as possible to do them while I'm driving. So I'm distracted and I'm just focused on the pain of whatever I'm talking about. And so I said yes, and I introduced myself and said, yes, so I just wanted to inquire about the process of filing bankruptcy for the business. And he goes, oh my God, wait a second. Did you say Marina? Oh, yeah, I know you. I've been following you for years. The phrase that usually would make my heart sing. I literally... I'm holding the wheel and I look up at the sky, like literally, like I'm looking at God and I'm like, really? Really? But what he said right after was, oh my God, didn't you just launch a new business? It looks really cool. I love what you're doing. And so because, in his eyes and to me, all I was at that moment was my one big failure. To him, that wasn't the case, because he was paying attention to me for better or for worse, for different reasons and different things. But that was that was a moment.
I can't even get over the alignment there. Like, two things. One, I remember calling the bankruptcy trustee, and there's no way on earth I should have been behind the wheel of a car, for sure, separately. But second, my bankruptcy trustee, account manager guy, his whole family bought groceries every week at our place, come to find it.
God.
And he's like, and there was no symbol that there was any problems. I can relate to that so much. But no, I definitely shouldn't be driving. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it wild? I like how you said that you can talk about it with a smile on your face now. And I've had that similar experience where, like, I had to move back into my parents' basement when this happened. And my whole family worked there too. So we were all out of a job right at the exact same time.
Wow.
And 5 days before Christmas, my brother just had a new baby. And and I remember, like, not wanting to leave the house because literally everybody in this town knows me. And everywhere I went, they're like, "Are you still doing that thing? Like, what's going on? That's exciting." Like, and then I'd be at the grocery store or the gym, and I just couldn't go. Like, I just couldn't go. And anyway, yeah.
Yeah, kudos to you. Like, maybe, because I enjoy and I think our business is doing well, but I don't know if I'm still a smile on the face. I still don't go to the farmer's market. It's been 9 years. It's just not.
You know what, Levi? I'll share another story. Maybe this perspective will help, because also that's what kept me going before, I started Brand of a Leader and started doing well. And I needed to tell myself a story that wouldn't feel really shattering to my ego and feel like I'm starting from scratch and like all those things, right? I remember years ago, so I was running the business, I was doing well, I was already in EO, and I was invited to speak at an event called the Fuck Up Nights. I'm not cussing and swearing, it's the name of the event, okay? And it's quite popular, I think, at least across Canada, maybe across North America. And the premise of the event is that the premise of the event is that you come and you tell a story of failure and you share it, kind of like open mic night, but there's a number of people that can just stand up and people that are booked to come and share their story. So you come and share your story of failure, and everyone shares a story of failure. And so it's that bonding experience. And so I got invited to speak there. And I got so excited. At first I said yes, because I would say yes to any speaking. And then I sat down and I thought, I have nothing to talk about. I don't have a story of failure. And so I pulled out of that gig, but I went to listen. And I literally had this feeling, well, I'm not a real entrepreneur because I don't have a story of a spectacular fail. I have nothing to tell. I'm not a real entrepreneur. I think I must have jinxed myself because I thought that a whole bunch of times. Because I would sit down with other entrepreneurs and everyone had a story, like of the spectacular, right? Like I'm on the phone and it's the bankruptcy person and they freaking follow you. Everyone had a story. I didn't have a story. And so when I failed, or rather I didn't fail, the business failed. That's what I kept thinking about. I'm like, well, now I'm a real entrepreneur because now I'm going to start another business. I'm going to have a story to tell. And that perspective helped me a lot.
And to be honest, it's the whole failure led me to very specific things that people saw me as more ready for, able to help with because of that failure. But I think the words you just said that I wanted to, so you said the business failed, not me failed. I think that's where I get, because now hindsight's not very forgiving, because now I have gone through many journeys. I've moderated and led peer groups. I've helped clients through all kinds of crazy stuff, and our own businesses of growing and merging and where we're at now. And I now am pretty confident that if I knew then what I know now, or had the relationships then that I have now, it wouldn't have failed. It wasn't the business that failed. It was the past me. And I just like the irritation of reset in the video game. Like I just want to try that again. Go back to the old
You
save
are,
file.
you are in a different context. But you know what, though,
Yeah.
Levi, like I don't even have that story to tell myself because I should have known better because every
The
mistake that we
pandemic,
made.
you should have known.
Well, we were told like I was an accelerator then in EO. I had every mentor you can imagine, and they would say, "Okay, you guys are business partners." Yes. What's your partnership? 50-50. They say that's a mistake. Do 49-51. Pff, ridiculous. Do you guys have a shareholders agreement? No. What do you mean? No, that's ridiculous. Ah, that's not for us. Thank you very much. We're good. Do you guys have cash reserves? How many months of cash reserves? What cash reserves? Like our business has so much cash flow. We're amazing. Like our revenue is crazy. Our profitability is insane. We don't need that. We were told. So I couldn't even look back and be like, if only I'd known. See, you didn't know. So at least you have a good reason. I knew. I just didn't listen. And so, of course, I had to learn the hard way. I had to go through it myself to now in the new business to, do things right. And now I listen to people. Now when somebody says something,
There's
I'm paying attention. I know it all.
there's knowing with a small K and there's knowing with a big K. there's,
Well,
there's knowing
My
and then there's
kids are
knowing.
grown.
Yeah.
I mean, I touched on this a little bit in a separate podcast, but I didn't like this whole peer group thing. I didn't get exposed till I was like 30. I don't know. This is only like 2.5 years ago, I guess.
You're still young.
And but like so I was trying to reach for things that would help me grow when I was like 18, 19, 20. And like I found like Tony Robbins and like I think Eric Thomas was another one. And it was all motivation stuff and mindset stuff, but there was really nothing around like execution and like good strategy and intentionality. It was all just like, hey, if I have the motivation, I can do this thing. And like looking back, that is why like that happened to me in that other business. Like I can directly link it back to there was like just a knowledge gap um, of the things that really matter, which is like the ability to execute.
For sure. There's
So
so many things. Yeah, so many things that we'll learn in EO through. And just there are a lot of things in EO that are available to us also. And I'm sure also in the group that you're in too, Levi, that people just don't tap into, right? Because beyond forum and beyond these great one-on-one conversations we have, there's also a plethora of learning programs that are transformational and they're mind-blowing. We don't have to figure things out. They're there. Also, to me, the path of leadership in EO has been my greatest learning. Really, I learned how to lead meetings. I learned how to have successful meetings. I learned how to have difficult conversations all through my leadership roles in EO. Because if you're able to have difficult conversations and if you're able to lead other leaders, then you can lead, people who are kind of supposed to listen to you, at least, somewhat. So that's another, there's just so much that you're still new in EO, but as you're exploring it further, it's mind-blowing how many resources and opportunities there are to just up-level as a leader in so many different ways. And from not just the motivational component that's there too, but also the, the execution and all the learnings and everything. I, 2 weeks ago, got to interview Deepak Chopra in person, thanks to EO.
yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Was that insane?
I can't describe to you. It made no sense. Like the things that I've done in if I gave you a list of things that I've done, like I spoke at an event in Saudi Arabia. Like Saudi Arabia, who's ever going to invite me? Like doesn't make any sense. I facilitated a thing in Macau. When they invited me to go to Macau, I went and secretly Googled it because I had no idea where Macau was, like at all. Like what part of at all? Like I didn't even know where on the map I'm looking. I grew up behind the Iron Curtain. And so I was at GLC, our Global Leadership Conference in Hawaii, and they send me an email and they say, hey, we were supposed to do virtual interviews. What did they say? Like virtual studio interviews with our main stage speakers. And the person who was interviewing them fell through. Would you like to be the one to interview them? And I was like, what? Like who? And they go, whoever you want. Here's the full list. And there's Deepak Chopra and there's Ryan Holiday, which Ryan Holiday was more starstruck because I've read all of his books. I'm a big fan of Stoicism. I always have at least one of his books by my bedstand. I chose Bethany Hamilton, who is the surfer that when she was 13, her arm got bit by a shark, and she's continued surfing and had a film and everything made. Anyways, so I chose the three of them, and I said, well, yes, I would like to interview them tomorrow. Can I choose my questions? Can I send them to you? And they said, yes. And then I said, when you say virtual, are they virtual? And they go, no, they're in person with you in the room, and then that's going to be available on our virtual platform. And I was like, oh. And with very minimal preparation, I got to interview all three of them. Deepak Chopra, that's the biggest flex. Ryan Holiday, that was personally just, I just really follow him. And then Bethany Hamilton, I got to bring my 9-year-old who's watched her film and was reading about her in the book. And at one point, they put him on my lap, and he asked a question with all the cameras and the lights. I wasn't breathing in that moment because that was another moment of stacking where my worlds came together, and I was just sitting there just staring. And that was really special. So that was quite something.
Wow. I did not know that part of the story. That's wild.
Very
Wow.
special.
What was now with is it Deepak?
Deepak.
How do I say it?
Yeah, Dr.
Deep.
Chopra.
What was there any like aha moment when you were talking with him, either on or off camera? Anything change for you?
Yeah. So first of all, one of the things is he's definitely, he's colder than I would have thought. And he definitely, and maybe because, a lot of attention, and I know that can also be, really tiring for people. But when he came into the room for me to interview him, his energy was kind of more of let's get this over with kind of vibe. He didn't verbatim said it, but I felt it. I had been throughout GLC on some kind of a sensorial overload. I think just everything happening and seeing people I know from around the world and just everything is just the energy of GLC is absolutely unreal. Like 1,500 of us from across the globe is unreal. And so I believe this was day 2 of GLC, and I was so overwhelmed by everything. It was very emotional since that morning. One of the speakers showed a video of a laughing baby, like laughing, not crying. I started crying. And so it was very emotional and raw. And so when Deepak Chopra came up to, they were miking him, I told him this. I said, Dr. Chopra, I'll be really, really open with you and share with you that I'm usually, not an overly, open and emotional person. But today I'm feeling incredibly emotional, and I'm hoping that this conversation came just at the perfect time for that reason as well. And I could feel that he warmed up when I said it. So it was a moment of a little bit more of an authentic connection. And then after I interviewed him, I actually did have an aha moment that kind of stopped me right in my tracks. I've been speaking all around the globe, right? And I'd been pursuing a speaking career very, very actively. And my life coach would often ask me, my vision coach, she would say, what's your dream? Do you want to give a TED Talk? Do you want to speak in front of 5,000 people? Like, what's your dream? And I could never connect with a dream. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? Is it just an insecurity or where's my dream? And as I finished the interview with Chopra, I had this huge aha moment that my dream is to interview the world's biggest thought leaders and not be the thought leader speaking. I want to be interviewing them. And I had this huge, it was just the biggest realization aha moment. I had no idea, but that was, I will chalk it up to the extra spiritual connection that was happening that day because of his presence. Wow. And that was my big aha moment. So I want to be essentially the next Oprah, but the Oprah that interviews, not the Oprah that's speaking on stage.
Wow. That's so cool. Congratulations. That's good clarity.
Thank you. I now already have in my portfolio, I have Ryan Holiday, Deepak Chopra. I can already show stuff,
Yeah, you kind of leapfrogged there a little bit, didn't you?
Right. Thanks to right again, because when would that have ever happened, right? And as they complimented me and they said my interviews were really stand out and really fantastic. And I said, well, next year, GLC, I can also be on the big stage. You let me know.
That is so great. Wow.
The devil you know.
Wow. Ryan Holiday is one of my favorites.
Oh, that was so cool. That to me was a huge highlight. I also learned that he's a supporter of Ukraine. His publishing house used to be in Belarus. And when the war started and he understood where the allegiances lied, he decided to put an end to that relationship. And he found himself another, I believe it was a publisher, I believe that's the vendor he was talking about. He found one in England. He said, I knew it was going to cost me. Didn't know it was going to cost me that much because that's like a very different price bracket. But he did what was right, and so to him that was important. And I told him when I interviewed him that was really meaningful to me because I'm Ukrainian. I then showed him my tattoo, which you can see Ukrainian colors. He showed me his tattoo that says "Ego is the enemy." So it felt like a cool, very cool bonding moment.
It's funny. It's always the little things you do. Like I haven't been able to make any impact at all, but we used a freelancer to help build a slide deck for a presentation I gave at a conference, and they happened to be in Ukraine.
Love it.
Working and and it was just like, yeah, but surreal also. Like you're having conversations and they're like very different mindsets. But that you can make those direct impacts and have those direct relationships as well.
That was right when it started.
It was very early on, yeah.
Yeah, right when it
I
started.
could not recommend hiring in Ukraine enough as you look to continue growing the business. And we used to hire in the Philippines, and we moved away from the Philippines to Ukraine. Find people with great English. It's great from the cost effectiveness perspective as we scale. For them, it's extremely meaningful because, of course, the economy is hard. And I can tell you, it's very different than managing employees in North America, where psychological safety is compromised at every corner and every moment. Whereas when my team member who is in Kiev, there was a big bombing of the children's hospital in Kiev. It was terrible, and he was obviously hiding out in a shelter. And then when he came out of the shelter, I messaged him and I said, "Hey, do you want to take the day off?" And he goes, "Why? What do you mean?" And I'm like, kind of maybe just like a mental health type of day. And he's like, "No, but it's finished now. I'm good. I have internet connection." And to me, when I contrast it, and I don't want to upset my North American team members, they're wonderful. But when I contrast it with just everything, there's a lot more propensity for feelings to be hurt very easily and things to be, just have a lot more of impact where they shouldn't. Hiring in Ukraine is both meaningful, easy to manage, and I just highly, highly recommend. If ever you're looking, I have a great headhunter that I work with that just charges a flat fee and finds people there. So
I was just about to ask how would we go about looking into that, because with our new kind of strategic plan that we came out with, we've got kind of the next three, four roles kind of like starting to be pretty fleshed out in our heads. I'd be curious to
And
learn.
they're definitely enabled to be worked from anywhere.
Yeah.
We've struggled with that level of time difference for our key roles that have like account management responsibilities because they're not asynchronous work. So it's not impossible, but it's a big commitment when it's that.
You can also find people who will work your hours. If
No, I
that's
know. It's just we need to
communicated from
find
the
that fit. Yeah.
Yeah, it would definitely be not. It's easier than some other countries like the Philippines, right? The difference is so hard that you can only overlap half. But so I have a fantastic headhunter. She charges €700 per search. It's a flat fee. And she interviews people, just same as any headhunter, interviews people, you give your criteria, presents to you, and then once you hire, you pay that person directly. So she's not an agency, she's one person. She was referred to me by, I'm actually in an EO Ukraine forum also. I'm helping build the chapter in Ukraine. I have a forum every month. We meet for 4 hours virtually. And so one of my forum buddies referred me this headhunter, and the first person she found me was my assistant. And it's the best assistant I'd ever had. So she at the time was in Poland and then has traveled around. She's already come to Canada. She's coming again in June for the One Canada conference, support me with the O Women Summit. Then she's found us our account coordinator, and now we're interviewing for a PR role and a marketing role, and she's supporting as well. I've referred her to a bunch of EO members too, who've hired through her, who work with her. So if ever you're looking for that support, I'd be very happy to make a connection. I get nothing from it. It just makes my heart sing.
Karma. You get karma from it.
Yeah. Yeah. You look like you're going to ask them. I got something too, but you go first.
I'm pulling back to the many notes I asked in our first 30 seconds, so you feel free if you're continuing down the chain. I've got some double clicks I want to make.
I think that would be more appropriate than what I'm about to ask, so I'll wait.
Now I'm curious about the inappropriate one. What's the inappropriate one?
What's the inappropriate one? You can't.
It's such a shift from what we were talking about that you go first, Levi.
I'm on pins and
Okay,
needles.
maybe I will.
Yeah, no, it's too late now. I'm not gonna.
I since like we're kind of talking about everything, I want to know like how you're doing and with everything that's going on in Ukraine and I actually haven't really talked to you about that on retreats because I didn't really know how to talk about it and it was I called my advisor Joel Hunter when that first happened because I was like I spiraled when that first happened and it was the only thing it completely consumed my life and then as things kind of I don't know I think it was really the news that kind of
Mm-hmm.
tapered off covering as much as it was
True.
and then and I just haven't really had a chance to really talk to you about it so I'd love to know from your perspective what's going on and what your thoughts are around everything.
Yeah, I first of all, I mean, same when the war started. Of course, I spiraled, and also it's not something I would have ever believed would happen. And as much as, of course, it's 2014, we already had the war in Donbass, which was an area where I would go a lot as a child. My aunt lived there. My aunts in that whole region. Two of my aunts lived there. I spent every summer in that area. But that still seemed, never in my life would I think that I would see tanks in Kiev or on the streets on which I grew up. It just never thought that would happen. I actually was coming from an event and hit a ditch and blew two of my tires and was sitting in a ditch for many hours waiting for to get rescued by a tow truck. And my mother called me, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to answer my mother because now I'm going to tell her about the ditch, and it's just going to be this whole thing. And she left me a voicemail message, and then I'm sitting there in the middle of nowhere. My car's now freezing. They're not coming. Two tires are blown. I'm literally in the middle of nowhere. It's getting late. My mother called me. I listened to the voicemail message, and I must still have it, and I still remember it very vividly. She said, the war has started. They're attacking Ukraine. And I get emotional just thinking about that. And although in the moment I thought my mother has officially lost her mind and has nothing better to do than just to call me with silly things. And then the next day, of course, everything on the news and seeing it everywhere. And then over the next couple of days, I grew up in a city called Kharkiv, which is right by the border. And so that was one of the first cities. And I also did not know that there are live cams on streets all over the world. And you can go on YouTube and you can just watch live cams. And so for the next few weeks, I would just sit in front of the TV and I would watch tanks go on streets of my hometown, which was really disturbing. And I mean, completely disturbing. I have family there. I have friends there. One of my childhood friends, I mean, he's like an HR guy, you know what I mean? And now he's in a military uniform and he's serving. Like, it just makes absolutely no sense, These are not military people. These are people like us. And so that was really hard. And that was, year one was when I started speaking about the war very actively. And that was the first time when I was so grateful that I had built some kind of a platform for myself because I would speak about it. I would post about it on LinkedIn. I got so much hate for it too. Lots of bots and trolls and things. But I started getting so many messages from people in that year one saying that they were donating. And they were saying that they were donating thanks to me because me talking about it and because they knew me. That hit closer to home and my pain, they could feel it. And I didn't know these people. And I was like, it's the first time I really understood that, they say it's not what you know, it's who you know, but really it's who knows you. That's the first time I understood that value of who knows you. Year two started receiving messages from people saying that they were opening the doors of their homes to Ukrainians to welcome and would ask me, how do I make borscht and what else should I put in the fridge? And they would say, I'm doing it for you. Which was also a lot of responsibility because I've got to know these people and Ukrainians are amazing, but some might not be. And that's a lot of, it's a lot of pressure to have. Year three, I joined EO Ukraine. We began to try to create a chapter in the middle of the war. What happened with EO Ukraine was we were supposed to, I was on the task team that was working on launching the first kind of recruitment event for EO Ukraine. It was supposed to take place in the summer of 2020, and they told me that I would go and I would be a keynote speaker. And that's all I could think about. So this was 2019, and this was all I could think about, because like, what a homecoming! I'm going to come back, and it's going to be EO people, and all my EO friends were saying, we're all going to come to Kiev, we're going to watch you speak, and I'm going to speak. I could not think of anything else. And of course, 2020, we all know what happened. There was no more travel anywhere, and then the war started. And then fast forward to last year, when I heard that we are building EO Ukraine, we found somebody who's going to champion it in Kiev. I said I want to get involved. And so year 3 of the war, I'm part of the first ever EO Ukraine forum, which is exceptionally rewarding. And now I'm talking about people hiring in Ukraine. So that's now the impact that I hope to have, is to inspire more people to hire Ukrainians and help the economy that way. It's very hard to manage and to deal. I try to stay off the news as much as I can, because it's hard. My heart breaks every time there's an attack, and then I, message my forum buddies, and like, how do you ask and what do you ask, right? What do you ask again? Like, what do you ask? They've become so numb to it. That's very hard. There is a Ukrainian account which only posts good news and like heartwarming stories that are like part of war or not, but in Ukraine. So follow that. And that gives me, a smile, because it's incredible how people are persevering and rebuilding and thriving, and the resilience of them. But of course,
What is
it's
that
hard. I just
account?
can't wait to go again. It's called Shotam, Shotam. I don't remember if there's underscore after O. So you know what? I'm going to send it to you. It's really, it's silver lining. It's very, very satisfying.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's really, it is really, it is unbelievable. Like, it's like that it even happened and is continuing to happen. And just some of the world's response is just, it's very strange. Everything's very, it's strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In these conversations, and I only have a chance to do a few, usually through those other peer groups that I help facilitate, is similar to the way you described earlier, Marina, going to the failure event without having your story yet. And I don't know about you, Colby, but I come from parents who were still together. I grew up in a safe household. I've had no conflict in my life. I've never had direct people who have gone through tragedy in any big way. I just nor do I wish any kind of that trauma, but it's that similar, like, it's easy to empathize, and it's hard to understand the realities of those major things. Like, it's just...
Yeah, it's impossible to understand, and it just gives such perspective. When I have my monthly call with my forum, 3 of them gather in person in Kiev in one of their places, and then 4 of us are spread out in other countries. And the 5% thing takes on a whole new meaning, because when people are living through what they're living through, they are so raw. The things they share just go like, oh, that's like a 0.5%. And then you can't really BS. You have to really, dig deep. You're not just going to... I've sat on a lot of forums in Canada where it's just, like, oh, my biggest... what's keeping me up at night right now is I have access to too much capital, and I don't know whether I should, start a new business or I should whatever. And I'm like, oh, my God. Like, you asshole, I don't have such a problem. It's not really... I have no experience share for you. But then when you sit on forum with people who are just really raw, but they're builders, right? They're still, they're me. They're there to grow their businesses and scale their businesses and exit their businesses and have big ambitions. But in the backdrop of, oh, yes, we just had a drone that fell 200 meters away. Oh, all the windows of my office exploded because there was an explosion. Oh, I'm really nervous. My employees are going to get drafted. I need to have a contingency plan. Oh, I'm nervous. I'm going to get drafted. I need a contingency plan for me. And so those conversations, well, then I have to dig deep to see what is my real 5% and not serve them something that's that I could get away with in my forums in North America.
Yeah. Yeah. It's privileged air to be hearing somebody share such real stories. I haven't in that particular one, but like everybody has, you can't really compare pain and trauma, but like hearing real experience shares, changes the level of connection completely.
Very much so. I can't wait to meet with them in person. We keep trying to plan our in-person retreat. I am the retreat planner, so I have a lot of ideas. I just want to see them in person and hug them for a very long time. But because they're guys of age where they could be drafted, they can't easily leave. The rules keep changing all the time. Just as soon as they, because clearly, I mean, these are guys who have the means. If they wanted to leave, they would have left a long time ago. Nonetheless, rules are rules, and so they keep changing on whether or not they can leave the country to come back. And so we keep playing around it. But the plan is this year we will meet somewhere in Europe in person, and I think that will be that will be special.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad we went there, Colby. Now I don't even want to bring up the
Well, that's what I
You're
thought.
super shallow.
Yeah.
I was going after more hacks, and now I'm just
Yeah, I know. That's why I said that. But anyway, I probably shouldn't have said that.
no, it's good.
Back to hacks.
Yeah, exactly. Stacking.
Uh, thanks a lot for the share. I think that's what I like about these conversations. This is a safe space to have real, meaningful conversations, and we don't have to skirt the issues and chat about them. Nor do we have to come to a resolution or solution, because it's not. These things don't get solved. They just need more sharing and talking, or they need more than that. But that's what we can do. Yeah.
I got another kind of big one. It's not. It's just that
All right.
I'm genuinely
Is
curious.
it religion, politics, sexual orientation?
It's a bit of both.
All of them combined.
I'm curious. It's not related at all, but when it comes to decision making in your life, how have you come up with any sort of formula, and how do you know you're still on track with the things that you're doing? Because you're doing a lot often, and it's like you're always gaining clarity but like, how do you kind of make these like large decisions, and if you have any examples of that? I'm often finding myself at a crossroads because there's been so much change over the last 10 years in my life, and they're all like, it's all pretty like high quality problems. It's like, Levi, you always say that. But like, when it comes to decision making, I'm curious because you've been in EO for, what you said, 11 years with the accelerator program, or like, have you found something that's worked for you, and like, even with your spouse as well, like your family, like making decisions all around for your business and your personal life? I mean, we are talking about blending the two, which I like more, because I always fought with work-life balance, and now I don't like it. I'd like to, but anyway, that's my question. How do you
All of that.
all of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't like work-life balance either, because work is my life. Like, it's just not the only thing in my life, but it is my life. Like, I love work, and I'm on many other things, but I really don't like that distinction either. How I make decisions. Listen, I think how we make decisions is very individual, because it needs to be rooted in what's important to us. To me, what's really important is to have fun. I want to live a life of fun and pleasure. That's really the most important thing to me. And that's what I always teach my kids. When my daughter has a dance competition, when my son has a test, no matter what, I always say, what's the most important thing, as they get out of the car and they look at me and they go, to have fun. And I say, yes, it's the most important thing, because, and mind you, I'm extremely competitive, and I want my kids to, I don't want them to just like float through life, and I want them to be successful. But I believe that when we play to our energy and we do things that give us energy, not drain energy, when we're having fun and we're enjoying, we're having pleasure, I do believe it all works out. Of course, under the umbrella of constant, growth and working on ourselves and all those things. But that is my guiding compass. Is this gonna be fun? And then people who are close to me, they already know to ask this as a question. So for example, if I get another role in EO offered to me, and I'll be telling my business partner, he'll say, and I'm like, should I do it? Should I not do it? He's like, is it gonna be fun for you? Because now if it's gonna be fun, for sure I'm gonna stick to it, and I'm gonna enjoy it, I'm gonna like it, it's gonna be great. If it's not gonna be fun, I'm not gonna do it. Mind you, you might say that's frivolous, and I don't know if that makes sense, but Deepak Chopra, when asked what's the most important thing on the road to success for all of us who are extremely success-oriented, he said joy. He said the most important thing, if you're going to be in pursuit of joy, then you're going to accelerate towards your success much faster than if it's, kind of a grind. And I was very happy. I felt that, my position in life was validated and justified. And now I can tell my kids who don't really know Dr. Chopra, but I can say, I've always told you, and that was right. So to me, that's what I use. I also, listen, I'm a woman. I'm very connected to my intuition. That's a benefit we have over guys. I'm stereotyping gender, but in general, women are more connected to their intuition, and I tap into mine a lot. And then I also, sometimes if I'm not sure what to do, there are people in EO that I can contact for some guidance. I do have a business coach. I have a vision coach. And so that helps as well. But at the end of the day, really, my hack is close my eyes. Is this going to bring me joy? Is this fun? Is this exciting? And that's how I make all my decisions.
No.
So I'm not aligned, but I've struggled with this because I think I made a lot of decisions like that I didn't have the discipline or these, so maybe not just discipline. It's around like what's the word? The control around your, finances, really. Like, following fun. And my fun wasn't like I just want to go spend money and have a good time, go on vacation. It was like I was doing impact-oriented problem solving in a business context that wasn't reaping a financial reward, fulfilling all get out. Super, super fulfilling and impactful, super fun. I could mark that yes 110% of the time, but without that like discipline, control, accountability piece.
Right.
And I'm always like, how do I make sure that I'm always looking at the two sides of the coin? And somebody is peppering in, and maybe the coach is the answer, but with and for me, it's why I sought out business partners specifically. I didn't want to run a business on my own anymore because I am going to be motivated by things that aren't necessarily making sure we're financially successful, because that number tick just didn't make sense. But for me, it's always, I got to make sure I have two sides. Two little angels on the shoulder.
Great question.
One is joy.
For me, the answer is the business coach, and that's accountability too. So we run on a system that's similar to EOS, but it's called Boss 360. There's a brand component in it, and to me, that's the answer. So we have our annual meeting, which we just had, where we look at everything that needs to be done for the business to continue growing. The thing is that I then do not put any tasks on my plate that are not going to bring me joy and are not going to be exciting to me. So then I either turn to my business partner and say, okay, well, those I'm not so interested in. Those are not going to make my heart sing. Do you want to take them on? We're very fortunate in that we're very different as far as things that excite us. When I describe what's very exciting to me, it's exciting to him only in theory and vice versa. So that works really well. And if it's neither one of us, well, then it has to be someone on the team. So yes, of course, important to have that plan in place and that clarity. But just as I said, I then don't put anything on my individual plate that will not fuel my soul. And I do reevaluate it frequently too. There were things in the business when we started that I loved doing, which I then realized I don't, and I hired someone else to do it. I'm not a believer in you need to, have some just work on your business, not in your business, meaning just replace yourself across the board. I just don't believe in that either, because if something is in my zone of genius and I'm very excited about doing it, it gives me energy, why would I have someone else do it? Like, I really want to be doing it. That's my business. And I have that, I have that privilege to be able to do it. But again, if I see that it's no longer bringing me that joy, then I can hire someone else to do it instead. To me, it has worked. And as I said, also, I am exceptionally growth-oriented. I'm always reading, studying, learning something. So that also, and so is my co-founder. So that also supports business growth. But as far as pure decision-making, that's my compass. That's how I decide. And to give a specific example, because you asked me for an example before, Colby, when I was tangentially contacted to lead, to be the chair of the EO Women Global Summit, the summit was in big trouble because they were only looking for the chair October, November. The event is in June. and nothing had been done on it yet. That's a very short timeline for a big global event. The event had just gone from being a MyEO event, meaning it's members for members. It just became, this is the first year, an official global EO event, meaning all eyeballs on you. And they couldn't find a chair. They asked me if I knew people that I could refer that were in Canada. And I said, should I just apply? Or like, you keep asking me. And they said, oh, it would be really nice if you applied. You have a lot on your plate, but if you applied, we would be so happy if you applied. And I said, let me sleep on it and I'll let you know tomorrow. And as I went home and I was thinking about it, like, that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of work. If it fails, and they told me afterwards, if this fails, everyone's going to look at you. If it fails, you fail. This is a big deal, Marina. And as I was evaluating all of that, there were 5 people registered at the time. Our goal was 100. So there was just a lot, right? And I was thinking about it's going to be so much fun. Like, I get to plan an event for other EO members in Montreal, and I can do it the way I want. And it's just going to be so fun. And so I said yes. And after I said yes, there were many people who were like, oh, you took it on? Oh, why would you do that? And listen, we blew past our registration. We're at 113 last I checked. At 120, we will not fit in the room anymore. So we're really down to our last tickets. It's the first time we've had sponsors, and we have $65,000 US in sponsorships. It's the highest revenue summit, highest number of people in attendance summit. We're going to have a watch party for Martha Stewart's Powerhouse, which is coming up in June. It's going to be the biggest watch party in its history. Over 100 women gathered together to watch Powerhouse. But I think I was only able to do everything that was done with the help of the most incredible committee that was energized with my energy, because I just felt that it's so much fun. And now when there's opportunity to do it again, I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be fun again. So I have to think about it. I know I can do it, but if it's not going to be fun, it's not going to be as good. So to me, that is how I make decisions.
Mm-hmm. It's like me. I drove across Canada and back, and that was great fun. I don't know if I'll ever do that again.
Right?
I'll cut out the middle anyway. From central Ontario to like Saskatchewan. Just, yeah.
That's a hard.
All right, quick
that's a
hack.
hard
I'm
part
going
of the
back
drive,
to.
I've heard.
You mentioned, and I think we've actually been working on some work with clients on this. Is there's SEO, and then you mentioned AEO, and I'd love. And you said we can come back to that, and we've been dabbling in this, and I think we're saying the same thing, but I'd love to hear what you meant by that.
Sure. I'm so excited to talk about it. I just gave a talk to EO New Jersey 5 days ago, and it's the first time I talked about AEO. And I said, who knows what AEO means? And several people raised their hands, and I said, what is it? And they said, it's AI engine optimization. And I said, it's not. And then I felt like I was so, in the loop and so knowledgeable. And they say never to do that as a speaker, never to make your audience feel that they're not knowledgeable. But in that moment, that ego boost is what I went for.
No, I make people feel that way all the time.
You idiot.
They actually say never do it. And I remember doing speaker training as part of our Global Speakers Academy, and they said never ask a question that people are not going to get right because you're just making them feel stupid. Don't do it. Here I am. I did it. But so I'm super excited to talk about it because, and just to quickly say, when AI hit the market, I told you that on one hand, we were very nervous that all our clients would just fire us and go do their own thing in GPT. But another concern I had was that our number one source of new client acquisition is referrals. But our number 2 source is Google search. And we've done amazing with Google, and especially for a new company, we're in the number 2 spot and very proud of it. But then all of a sudden I said, okay, but I'm not using Google anymore. I'm now asking GPT for stuff, which if I'm doing, other people are going to be doing. And now they're not going to find us anymore. So what are we going to do? I got very nervous. I'm like, number 2 source of client acquisition. And all of a sudden, and every time we have a prospective client come to us, I always ask the question of how did you find Brand of a Leader? And all of a sudden, the first person, oh, I think I looked you up in GPT, and almost like uncomfortable, like almost apologetic. And I go, oh, yes, they found us in GPT. And then another, and then another, and then another. And clients start coming on board, and they came through GPT. So I went to GPT and I said, how do you find who to recommend? How does this thing work? And that's where I learned about AEO, which is answer engine optimization, not AI. And that's where I learned that how AI works different in its search is it's giving results on the back of thought leadership. And so it said, because you, Marina, have been investing all these years into your thought leadership, you are now seen. Da, 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 da. And so it's no longer, well, we know that SEO for many years used to be a purely technical job, right? Then it became more focused on content. But now with AI search, which focuses more on who gives the best answers, i.e. who's an expert, i.e. who gives unique thought leadership, because now a lot of us are using AI for cookie cutter content. There's nothing unique, but who's giving something unique? And now it's feeding results on the back of thought leadership versus just, here are the websites that rank highest. And I've had several people say, I ran a search and it said, here are the top experts in the field. And then it would say, so Marina, and Marina owns a company that's called Brand Level Leader, which is a huge shift in how search is done, because now we're in GPT, but also how those results are fed. So thought leadership is becoming just humongously more important. I think any CEO who's not just obsessively investing in building their thought leadership will lose to the CEO who he is. And we're also seeing now more and more, we're having clients who will start off with a CEO working with us, and then we'll put their entire executive team, because to your earlier point in our discussion, Levi, when it all hinges on one person, that might not be a great thing. But when that thought leadership is built from multiple people, it becomes exceptionally powerful. And so... So it went from being really potentially bad news for us to really good news, because now it shows that thought leadership is even more important than we could have thought.
It blows my mind how people aren't talking about this more. Like, even the people who, like yourself, know that they no longer Google things, aren't thinking about the other side of that and what that means.
I don't Google anything really anymore at all. Like,
I Reddit some things.
Yeah.
And I use Google to access it.
Yeah.
And GPT pulls a lot from Reddit, right? Because even more so, because Reddit is answers to questions, and it favors answers to questions.
And it's considered the most trusted place on the internet today.
There you go. And it pulls even more from that than Google search. So for people who are GPT and just that participating in forum and having that thought leadership, it's becoming huge. But it's not so surprising that people don't think that it's relevant to them. Because when I speak to business owners, I can see that they're agreeing with what I'm saying, but in the back of their heads, they think like, but that's not relevant to me because my business is B2B, or because I'm B2C, or because I'm too local, or because I'm too global, or because I'm too small, or because I'm too big, whatever the story. It's identical to what was happening with social media. When we started first talking about social media, it was the same thing. It's not for us. Yeah, okay, no, I get it for other businesses. But for me, I'm small, I'm big, I'm global, I'm local, I'm B2B, I'm B2C, right? The reasons. Yeah. It's going to hit everyone because, again, businesses are going to start losing to companies with bigger thought leadership. And it takes time to build. It's not like you can boom and build thought leadership. But you have clients who say, oh, but I thought I would see results. It's been 3 months. Well, you can't go to the gym and see a transformation in 3 months. So certainly this is going to be a lifetime endeavor. But yeah, it's the transformation of this whole, just of marketing in general, has been quite remarkable.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated by those transformations because a lot of people are like, it's making it less human. They talk about bots. It's like, I don't know. The directions I'm seeing is just like, it's going to be harder for you to show up as human. Like, it's going to be thinking. Second hack question. I'm going, before you take it again, Colby, with your big, meaningful, philosophic thoughts. The personal website you mentioned earlier, and I have actually sat on the @levilawrence.ca URL. I've owned it and paid the registration for a decade. And I keep thinking I'm going to do that because I used to do a lot of speaking, and I was like, I was going to branch outside of my company stuff, and I've never bothered doing it. And it comes down to silly, stupid things. Like, I don't know if, like, is it pretentious to have an @LeviLawrence? And what would you have? You wouldn't have Levi @LeviLawrence. Like, what are you, so not necessarily my specific example, but pros, cons of a personal website, any things to be aware of or things to avoid or best practices?
Listen, again, it's a personal thing. I don't believe that everyone needs to have a personal website. However, when people Google you, for me, it's easy because if you Google my name, absolutely nobody else comes up. You know, when I came to Canada and I loathed the fact that I had a last name that everyone would make some kind of a comment about, now I'm really happy there is nobody with this spelling of my first name and last name. So if you Google me, I don't even need a personal website. It's all me. It's all me. Yeah, it's all me. In images, videos, click around, it's all going to be me. However, especially if that's not the case for you, because you don't have an interesting, unusual name, they added a lot of extra letters to my name because it was different alphabet, right? We have Cyrillics. So my passport was in Cyrillics. And then when they changed the alphabet and I got the passport, I had to remember what all those letters were. Imagine when they did that thing of creating our documents, my sister's last name did not get a Y and mine did. And so it's very hard for us always when we travel together to explain, no, neither one of us misspells. It's just what it is. But so it was hard for me to remember all those letters myself. The good thing is you Google me, it's just me. So the need for a personal website becomes a little bit less prevalent. For someone who doesn't have that, that privilege and luxury, if people Google your name and other people come up, well, when you have a domain and a website, active website with active content with your name, you're going to come up top of search. That's a good thing, right? If people are looking you up. So that's one benefit. Can it feel a little bit narcissistic? I think depends on the content of that page and how it's created. So for some people it is, and because a lot of the personal websites we see, it's a lot of people who just want to communicate their self-grandeur, or they bought too many courses on funnels and stuff, and then you go on that website and it's just, the funnel website.
Best-selling Amazon book.
Everything, yes, and it's just not in a bestseller, right? And it's not, it's just not inspiring and it's not good. So you can create your website that's going to be like a normal website. It's just going to be about, your thought leadership and different things, and it can be good that way. As I said, it's helpful if you're speaking, and it's helpful, right? Because people ask, I want to see something. Well, what are you going to send them? An email? Because they want to see a speaker sheet, but they also want to see a video of you speaking in a sizzle reel. So now you're sending like a whole bunch of links and attachments, and it kind of looks weird. You can send them to a page. It's more practical and it's easier. So it's not a must, but it helps. Now, my recommendation is to avoid, again, the same trap that we spoke about at the very beginning, to not execute and do something before figuring out, well, what are you doing? What is your brand? Again, what's going to be that angle? What's going to be that brand story that someone's going to read on the website and going to be like, okay, he's not one of, those guys, he's one of these guys, right? All that, when you figure it all out, that's why the first step of what we do with clients is figuring out their brand identity. When that's clear, then it's so much easier to build the website and to build the sizzle reel and to, create content on LinkedIn, because that's the foundation. So my biggest recommendation would be to not do anything without figuring it out first.
Which is like using our words against us. Like we use that word every day with everybody me. It's like, you shouldn't do anything. You shouldn't get a CRM. You shouldn't do anything until you figure out what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it. It's like,
Yeah.
We know that, but not when it comes to our own visibility, right? And especially, and there's no shame in that, because we also get so much bad advice, right? Because there's so many people out there, just do it, just post, just do it. And it's just terrible advice, which we would not take, as you said, in business. But we think when it's our personal brand, then that's fine. And it's just the same poor advice, or just post it a million times a day everywhere. And it's all advice that's maybe relevant to lifestyle influencers, right? Just post how you're making your morning coffee, or just post. I mean, what's there to lose? But we're also we have a reputation to protect. Our goal is not to position ourselves as lifestyle influencers. We do want to position ourselves as thought leaders. So just post 100 times a day becomes that misleading advice that we see all the time.
Yeah, I like that idea, because I think I'm too short. So when you Google my name, or maybe it's because when I Google my name, because I have all the regions and the exposure, but thankfully there's not that many Levi's. So, I'm still pretty easy to Google. But in the top 3 results, and I just checked right now, and it's still there, the top 3 results, no matter what I've done, is Levi Lawrence reflects on the closer of his company, Real Food Connections, and it's a photo. It's been in the top 5 results every time I've Googled it for 10 years. And it's like I just need to put more content on the other side so that drops down a couple categories. Because that is the frame of the identity when you Google it.
That's true, but you bury that with a lot, with not just content, but content that's on high authority pages, right? Yeah. You know that, and you won't completely eradicate it, but at least you bury it so it doesn't.
Well, and I don't want to eradicate it. It's an important part of the story. I just don't want it to be the top and the first image.
Right, I relate to that.
Well, it's as you two talk about this, because I know that Levi's spoken quite a bit, and Marina, you speak all over the world. Like, it's something that I've been interested in for a while, and I've done small bits. Um, and I always just said like, "Oh, I don't have anything to say," and that was
Mm.
just this. Like, I had the same because I've been a musician for 20 years, and I never actually wrote lyrics because I thought I had nothing to say that
Mm-hmm.
was unique or different or whatever. And I'm noticing a common thread. I'm doing this in real time right now. I'm noticing this common thread where, I think I just haven't explored it enough. Like, I put so much thought and strategy into like whatever business venture is going on, but I've never really done it with, you know, my own personal, like, who am I to the world,
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
It's interesting you say that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Marina. But I've never been driven by the message I want to get out. I've always been the kind of person who's like, well, pick me a topic. I want to see how I can say it and resonate. Like it's a total enjoyment of the art. The message really. It happens that I've had meaningful things I have thoughts on an occasion, but I don't need like that. Doesn't I? What about turnips? Great. Let me talk to you about the grand world of
You're like
turnips.
the Toastmasters guy.
Or like I used to have. We had a bunch of debates, and farm salmon or not farm salmon, vegan or paleo. It's like, well, give me a side. I'll do either one.
Oh my God, I
Great.
love those too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
just
love
let me
those.
chicken versus steak. I'm on it. Just pick which one you want me to take. Uh,
Well, so I'll a bit more on that. Like, I've been watching a lot of stand-up comedy the past few years, and what I've been noticing about comedians, and I guess I don't know why I only noticed it with comedians, but is like the whole idea with a comedian is that you find your angle on things that everyone's talking about. And
Mm.
if that angle resonates with people, whether you're Dave Chappelle, George Carlin, Shane Gillis, whatever, young, old, it's like you can take the same subject and it's going to resonate with different people. Like, it kind of hit me a little bit of like, oh wait, maybe I do have something to say from like the angle that, yes, I'm talking about the same things that everyone else is talking about, but like I feel like I could pull something interesting.
You definitely
Um,
have an angle, and I just have to address what you said, because when you said, do I have anything of value to say, that when I hear someone says that, I just literally feel like there's a dagger that went through my heart. I feel that there's nothing more priceless than our voice, right? And certainly growing up, and it was the Soviet Union, it's I have that feeling. I became a public speaker for no other reason other than I have a voice. People can listen to me. Like I can, it's such a privilege, and that's what I'm going to do. Mind you, I was at the very beginning of that journey. I was told by a fellow EO member to never do that again, that was not good, that it wasn't going to be good.
I
He
remember that.
sent me, yeah, he sent me an email detailing why I should never do it again. I was mortified because he was in my chapter and I would have to see him again and again. But I continue to, only because, of course, you have something to say and I have something to say and Levi has something to say. We sometimes have to frame it so that we do feel more confident with it, right? There are people like you, Levi, who just give me a microphone and I'll talk on anything. There are people who feel more confident if they're bringing something like a framework or something to the table with a story that can move and inspire. That's me. So there are different people, but of course we all, again, voice is absolutely just a priceless thing that we have. What helps in the process is, so I can give you an example. I hope he doesn't mind that I'm going to give you as an example, but we both know him, Doug Adlam, who is in our chapter. When Doug came to us as a client, he wanted to figure out again, what is his brand going to be all about, and what's going to be his angle. And I don't even know at the time if he was. I know he's done, speaking here and there. I don't know if that was his big focus or became over time. I don't remember. But as we took him through the process of introspection, and one of the things that we realized was he's one of these guys who gets really excited by the first few years of a business. And then when things are doing well, and it's kind of incremental, he gets painfully bored. And he almost felt, often people come to us and they want us to brand them away from where they get criticized. We often get that. So he would say, I'm often misunderstood, and people often go like, oh, like I don't know, think that he's just restless or he's not committed, but it's just not that. Like, that's how I'm wired. I am your guy to come and ignite things and start things. And as they take off, once they're flying and it's fine, like the plane's not breaking apart, then I want to get another plane off the ground, right? And so he was like, what do I do with that? And so for him, we created the concept of exponential entrepreneurship. We said, you, Doug, are an exponential entrepreneur. And an exponential entrepreneur thinks in exponential terms, acts in exponential terms, creates businesses in exponential terms, and anything that as soon as it doesn't feel exponential, because there's exponential growth, right? And then it stabilizes and trails down a bit. Once it's not exponential, it doesn't fuel you anymore. So boom, all of a sudden he feels understood. He can, right off the bat, instead of telling people a very long story about how he is, he says, I'm Doug, I'm an exponential entrepreneur. And then people go like, well, also you can kind of already imply meaning to it. It's not like a very weird term, but also he can explain it and then it gives it structure. So that became his thing. That was our work together. And then he said, well, now I'm ready to become a speaker. Now I need to design a talk around the topic of exponential entrepreneurship. And so I said, well, you need to go to Global Speakers Academy because EO has a product for this and they're going to teach you how to be a speaker. And he was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to go and I don't have time. And the timing is bad. The time is always bad for us, right? It's always timing or money or something's just not right. And I really went on a whim. I really insisted. Like I felt, again, as I said, I'm very plugged into my intuition. And I just felt he needs to go. It was like I'm forcing him and taking a risk because it's a big investment. And then if it would have been a flop, I would have felt uncomfortable. It wasn't gestalt. I was telling him what to do. And he went, and it was absolutely transformational for him. Transformational. He's become a speaker since. He has quite a few now opportunities. He's been reached out to for opportunities as well. But see, when you have an angle, so now you're like, I'm talking about exponential entrepreneurship. People go like, oh, what's that? That's interesting. You're bringing something new to the conversation. He already has a plethora of stories because we didn't make something up for him that's irrelevant and now he needs to connect it. He has all the stories. We took it from him. And then he went and packaged it. So he has a talk and a formula that works for him and that he's able to then present. So that's the roadmap, Colby, or one of them.
I love it. I love it. I love it. It's EO, the global what? Speaker what?
Global
Academy.
Speakers Academy. It's phenomenal. The next one is in September in Cancun.
Going to Cancun next month. Check it out.
Global Speakers Academy. That's
Never-
interesting.
never-
Sorry,
bad
your
reason to
professional
go to
development budget's blown for this year, Colby. Sorry.
Totally.
Next year. With problem is we're big learners. We're big learners and experience. So yeah, we got to be careful with that budget.
Oh,
whole
you
team.
tell me about it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
relate. When I saw that budget at the end of the year, the non-budget, when I saw what I actually spent at the end of the year, I was
Yeah. The hindsight budget. Yeah, that's kind of what happens to us too. We've said like 6 times in the last 6 months. It's like let's better like plan for that budget going forward. It's like, but then
Yeah.
that conference comes up or that event
and
comes
you're like,
up.
we weren't planning, but it's a must attend and must do. I relate to that very much.
Yeah.
We've explored a lot of areas. Is there anything you wanted to ask us or chat about? Any curiosity you wanted to itch, Marina?
Yeah, I'm very curious about how you guys are marketing the business and what is your I'm so allergic to the word funnel, but I guess your main sources of how you get clients, how you get visibility.
Great.
Why are you laughing?
I can make this super easy for you. What you said when your business, it was like, hey, number 1's word of mouth, number 2 is Google searches, ours is word of mouth, and that's where it stops.
No, I disagree with that.
I
disagree
know.
with that.
I'm being hard on us. But the word of mouth, number 1, and since, I don't know, can we safely say January? We've been like putting a pretty intentional push on consistent messaging across 3 social platforms, and we launched the podcast, and we're revamping our website to kind of match. The problem that we were facing was that it was hard for people to understand what we were doing and kind of what line item you'd be putting it in the business, and how do we become more of a need than a
We were also 2 companies in one for a long time.
Yeah.
We were a content creation company and like a business advisory company, and that was a year and a half ago. We kind of cleaned that up.
Yeah.
But I would say we say word of mouth, but underneath the word of mouth is 3 managing business owners, all invested in deep peer groups and networks. Like that's
The
like a significant
referrals, would you
investment
say
into
referrals is a big one?
referrals is a big one. Now we're trying to go outside of our market. So in Atlantic Canada, like we're pretty well known, or we have strong networks. We can go and get work, but we've made the decision to go outside of that region. We've done some work outside of the region. We were planning to go to the U.S., but right now that's kind of paused for the moment. But
I wonder
um,
what.
well, we were supposed to go down to a trade mission in the States, so we planned. But
They,
um,
and the government canceled it. They were like, "Hey,
yeah,
we don't know how this
hey,
is going to go."
let's not even go there. But we made the decision. We made it's like well, we need to get outside of our own market. We also don't want our sales to be dependent on the ownership, which is we're successful, but the sales all tied back to the source of typically one of the 3 owners or a client, which came from one of the 3 owners. And so part of this is the podcast. It's meant not to be a soliciting sales of our company podcast here, but to get ourselves out there to meet new people, to cause conversations. We're starting to sell courses. So like how does your team use AI collaboratively is kind of the first one. Like things that are not the regular spin, but ways for us to engage with other people. And then we all took different directions. I started speaking again. So I think next week I have my 4th conference I'm speaking at. And so like we're looking for other ways to generate inbound. But yeah, we don't have an easy answer because we didn't need it until we needed it, and now we want it.
Yeah, fair enough. By the way, do you know, Colby, that one of the member benefits that we have with EO is that we can write and submit articles to Inc. magazine?
Colby, you got to get me this book of things you're allowed to use, and like, come on now.
Honestly, Levi, nobody knows that. That's like I talked to 20 plus year members, and they're like, "What?" I got an email from our global editor from the global team, who goes, "Hey Marina, I'm low on content for Inc. for whatever month. Do you have anything to send?" I'm like, "This is terrible. Like we're a bunch of business owners. Everyone's desperate for PR and for some kind of visibility, and nobody knows about this." I'm like going around telling
Sorry.
everyone. So
You're
yes, if
now,
you can
who do we
write.
send it to? And
I'll send you the information, Colby.
oh, because
Send me an email, and I'll give
we
you.
are writing. Yeah.
Yeah, so 800 words. It can't be more than 800. It needs to, of course, not be soliciting. It needs to be thought leadership based. Stories. Yes. So essentially, you write the article, you send it off. Hi, I'm an EO member. I'd love to contribute to Inc. And then it goes in. Inc.com, there's your article. And as I said, most people don't know that. So there's your value from this interview. There you go.
Yeah. If you don't do it, Colby, I'll just write it and put your name on it.
Right.
There isn't a budget for 2 EO chapter memberships right now, so I can't just go and join right now. So
Totally. Here you go. Just put it under his name, or you just submit and say, "Here's an article from an EO member, Colby." But I would say, you know what, referrals are the best source of it's the best leads, right? Because those
the feather in our
Colby.
cap right now is that we actually have a lot of repeat clients. We're over 50% of our clients have come back for a repeat project,
That's gold.
and so
That's
that's
gold.
been great. But we do like the idea of that American dollar. I won't lie, just because the other thing, like internally, what drives us on the American front was in Canada, everybody finds some kind of financing support for our type of work, which is great. Um, but in the U.S., they don't, and I just like being able to stand on your own 2 feet and really understand the value you're delivering is worth the dollar to a different perspective. That's a game I'd like to win. I'd like to prove ourselves. It'd be like I'm funny, but I want to prove myself on stage and stand up. Like I want to have somebody who's going to punch me in the face if it doesn't work out. Where here they had it all subsidized, so it just seems to feel like a little bit less. Like, that might be all in my head, but I love the idea of finding that different ring to fight in.
No, I relate to that. Most of our clients are in the U.S. and I relate to that. And you know what we do? We charge our Canadian clients in Canadian dollars, and everyone outside of Canada the exact same amount. So let's say our monthly retainer is $1,500 a month Canadian, or $1,500 U.S. for outside of Canada. So we're patriotically Canadian, but also it definitely helps to have business outside.
Selling to somebody outside of Canada and bringing the money home is the most patriotic thing you can do.
agree. I agree. And then my other patriotism, which is for Ukraine, right? So it hits all
Yeah.
the different buckets.
Totally. Wow. Is there anything else that you're working on that you're excited about?
I have a bunch of very exciting EO roles, as I said, so I really look forward to that. One of the big ones is being part of the global products portfolio, so making sure that our members in different regions across the globe know about all of our products, because as you can see, we don't, right? We don't even know about member benefits. And so that role I'm very excited about. On the business side of things, a lot of people are not sure what the difference is between a personal branding agency in our context and a PR agency. So we're placing big focus this year on PR. We do right now podcast placement. So we place our clients as guests on podcasts. So that's also, PR agencies do that too. We want to expand more into media, traditional media, or maybe more so digital blogs and things like that, because we need to be geographically agnostic because our clients are all over. So that's a big focus for us right now. And then before the end of the year, we also want to expand into publishing. We want to help our clients write books. And so now we're wondering whether we want to start that from scratch or much more likely acquire a publishing house, because they come with credibility, and this kind of thing, it helps when there's credibility and we can say these are the books that have been written. And so by the end of the year, we just did our strat planning for the year, and that's one of our, among other things, that's one of our big goals for the year. So
That's
lots of
awesome.
exciting stuff.
It's an interesting, disrupting world. I'm excited to hear a year from now how you navigated that.
I'm not a very technical person. I'll say that right now before I say what I'm about to say. But I sat through an SEO audit of our current website, old website, and I didn't know the effectiveness of an FAQ until recently, and that's been kind of blowing my mind now. And I'm very excited about FAQs. I just want to say that out loud.
And a lot of writing blogs that are answers to questions too. No, I think it's really, I think most
Yeah.
people don't realize that, Colby, and that's why I said that's the new thing. That's the AEO. That's the answer
Yeah.
engine optimization, right? You're
Yeah.
creating your website as a website where people come to get questions answered, but most people don't realize that,
That's
right?
our
So we're
big
still
switch.
optimizing to
Yeah.
huge how many keywords in an article, and it's just we're past that now. It's the FAQ. It's
Yeah.
the FAQ on your LinkedIn profiles, right, as you're creating content, and
Yeah.
Reddit you mentioned, and all those other places.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Big
that's
shift.
exactly what we're doing now. We're a few dozen hours into just writing some of that question content, pulling it from our past projects. So, because our whole company is around bringing simpler answer to complicated questions for people who don't have time to go learn stuff. So, I think we have a really interesting position to be that place for easy to understand answers to complicated things.
That's very cool. That's a cool way of putting it too, and that's why also, as you start thinking about your thought leadership, that's why also guesting on podcast is great, because that's you're answering questions, right? And if they're on your expertise, you're answering questions, and then that other format of an FAQ will go in a transcript, and aside from the Spotify and Apple and all those places, it's going to be in the transcripts they post. It's going to be in the show notes on their website. Then you take that and post it on your website. So aside from launching a podcast, which is great that you guys have done that. I know it's a lot of work. Also, guesting on podcast is way less work, and gives those great AEO benefits as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next steps, one step at a time.
Yes, yeah.
One step at
I'm just glad,
one.
like we had been talking about the podcast for a long time, and once we got the first one, I suppose. What was the first one? Was it?
So the funny story, the vulnerable share and maybe nobody makes it this far into the episode, but the initial pilot episode we aired and we launched it. I think we published it in January, and it was just like the origin story is what I called it, because it's you and I with a glass of wine talking about what the hell we want this to be, and it's got by far our highest viewership. We recorded it March the year before.
Yeah.
And it was just it took us time, and we just put it off. We didn't have time, and we always talked about it. And it's been much more consistent since then. But I think when we posted that in January, I looked, it's that was 8 months, 9 months, 10 months.
Yeah. I was living in a different city.
Yeah.
But that's very cool.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that my co-founder and I have been talking about as well as we're looking to launch another season. We have a podcast too. Is it looks like there is that shift from those shorter and very polished, like Q&A, like very tight podcasts to more just kind of sitting back and chatting. Especially, I could imagine with you two chatting because your partners is just very like casual, natural, kind of right, like going back and forth. And it looks like that's becoming more of a trend. So that would explain why that was also a successful one.
Well, I like the idea of us being trendy, but it's also we had to design something that gave us joy. We have to enjoy the process.
Yes,
doing
sir.
this for
Yeah.
Amen.
Back to your point, one of the things that there's a certain aspect of sales that I'm good at, which is making connections with humans. And then there's the grind day to day that sucks the life out of me, like the idea of a cold call. Like I can get in a mood where I can do it for like 2 days, but like God forbid there's any consistency required after that because I'm going to need alcohol.
Yeah.
But with the podcast, meeting new people, going on these adventures with EO and like, trying to find what's kind of not taking all my energy. This has been unbelievable for me because it gives me energy throughout the week. We almost were recording one once a week for the last month. We have to slow down, but it's so fun.
We had 3 scheduled for this week. We actually pushed some of those. Like it's just like no. We can't.
Yeah.
You say yes to everybody who's like is a good fit. It's like we reach out. It's like, oh, that would be a really great. Let's see if they're interested. They're like, yeah, you want to do that next week? It's like, yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for not rescheduling me. This has been really a great conversation. And
No, this is great. This is the joy of our week and month. It is the conversation and even the posting and the conversations that come after. So I'm excited to kind of see the ripple effect of these conversations.
Likewise. And please make sure to give me the link so that I can also promote and share on my end as well.
I'll geek out and show you our whole process. I'm deeply technical, so we got all kinds of stuff coming.
Yeah. Thank God you are.
The true value
All
of
right.
partnership.
Well, complementary skills and alignment on values. 100%. It's what we got. It's the superpower.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, I think this is a really great, nice point to end. And I mean, I am that guy who looks at the timeline and is like, oh, we finished that. We finished exactly on time. It's just magical.
Right. That's one of the biggest things I've learned in EO, start on time, end on time. I've heard that phrase so many times.
Remember,
I
used to manage those types of retreats for many, many years. So I'm constantly, Thank you very much for your time. And we'll make sure that there's show notes with all the links possible of where to find it. So it won't be just us connecting and giving you a link. It'll be making sure we really support all the people we talked about, organizations and events.
Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Right.
Yes, thank you.
See ya.
This episode of Built to Last is brought to you by Ironhouse Pro, your behind-the-scenes partner in building organizations designed to thrive. We specialize in solving the big challenges, the small annoyances, and everything in between. So while you're out there dreaming big, we're here making sure your systems, processes, and people are ready for tomorrow. Ironhouse Pro, driven to create lasting organizations. Learn more at ironhousepro.com.